Food Forward South Africa says the country is one of the few places that does not have a food donation policy in place to secure surplus food, and this undermines the sustainability of our food systems. According to the organisation, South Africa has more than enough food to feed the nation, yet the country is beset with the highest incidences of child malnutrition in the world. Food Forward SA says the number of stunted children in the country is currently almost at 30%, while more than 10 million tonnes of good food is lost or wasted across our food system each year. To discuss this topic, we are joined by Mpumi Maisela, the founding director of SE Holdings. This is a company that provides agricultural sustainable solutions, and we've got Andy du Plessis, who's the managing director of Food Forward SA. Both of you, thank you for joining us and welcome to Morning Live.
Morning, Leanne. Thank you for having me.
So, Andy, let me begin with you because I was quoting quite a bit from findings from Food Forward SA. So, if I may ask you, what is the food donation policy at the moment, and where does SA stand on that?
So currently in South Africa, we do not have any regulations around food donations at all. We look to two legislative documents in South Africa. The first is the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act, of which the Department of Health are the custodians, the National Department of Health, and then the Consumer Protection Act, which the Department of Trade and Industry are the custodians of. And both acts don't talk to food donations. They don't explain what food donations and surplus food is. And so in South Africa, we have this issue where people or actors throughout the food system are hesitant to donate because there are no food donation regulations across South Africa currently.
I mean, there is a perception, and Andy, I'm staying with you on this one. There's a perception from a lot of South Africans out there that, you know, when we talk about food wastage and we get rid of food, this food is expired or it's off, or, you know, it'll be harmful to those that consume it, and, you know, hence it must be thrown away. What is that perception right?
It's an absolutely incorrect misperception, and nothing can be further from the truth. So across the food system, from farm to fork, we work with farmers, wholesalers, retailers, manufacturers, quick service restaurants, etc. And throughout the food system, because food systems are so complex and the food value chain is so dynamic, there are huge amounts of food that is edible, that is within date, and that is just found surplus because of overproduction, over-ordering of goods, incorrectly labeled goods, problems that occur during the manufacturing process. So the outer box of the product is the label is skewed, or it's an incorrect label, but the product itself is still integral and it's still food safe. And so on farms, for example, with specifications, when a farmer grows for a retailer or a manufacturer, a retailer or manufacturer wants a very specific product, and though some are blemished, some are skewed, some are ugly food, and that's the kind of products that are surplus in the value chain on the agri side. On manufacturer side, because they have to overproduce to make sure that they have enough food for our citizens in South Africa, they have to overproduce this food and store it. And oftentimes the supply chain doesn't buy it in time, and then that food sits in warehouses until it is expired. So that's also usable food. And on the retailer side, when food doesn't get bought by the consumers, that food also sits. It's still within date, but it may have 3 weeks or 4 weeks shelf life left. So it's edible, it's within date, it's good food, and yet it is going to waste all across our food system in South Africa.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, also, as you say, and, you know, while you're speaking, you're reminding me of stories of, I hear that. I mean, you've got these fancy retailers. I don't think we need to name them. I think all of us know who it is. You buy these little carrots that come in these certain shapes, whether they're circles or they're round or they're whatever. And if it's not perfect, they get thrown away. They're perfectly fine, but they get thrown away because they're not up to the straight or round circle that they ordered. That is scary.
Absolutely.
Mpumi, let's bring you into this conversation because, I mean, you know, growing your own food, you don't grow carrots in balls, you don't, but that's just a fashion item, obviously, a food fashion item, which is nice to have. But at the end of the day, I mean, when we're throwing food away like this, do you think people would rather grow their own food rather than wait for donations? Tell us a little bit about your role in all of this.
Thank you so much, Leanne, and thank you for a very, very good question. I think nothing really should be going to waste. So, I mean, that's like a crime to have food or any part of whatever being produced agriculturally go to waste. So, I guess from Andy's point around understanding and bringing all the food in, that's a valid point to see how people are supported. From my view, I strongly advocate for bringing the sustainable solutions around agriculture. How do we ensure that as many people as possible understand how to grow a carrot? How do we ensure that we have farmers that have chickens running around their houses? How do we, in the rural areas, how do we ensure that people start having that pride and joy around having their own food grow in their gardens? And that's really where we come in, from really backyard garden all the way to commercialized farming. And that's basically what we do. And we've experienced all the challenges and the experiences that Andy was talking about. And from our end, how we look at it, it has to start from a very young age. We need to teach and expose our young people to agriculture. We need to make our young people excited about food, excited about where it comes from, how it's grown, why do we grow it, and how to look after the environment so that it looks after us. It's really a crime for me to even think about the fact that there's so many children that don't even know where a tomato comes from. We go to schools, we ask these questions, and they say it came with a truck. And it should be a very simple answer where every child knows that the tomato grew in on the soil, and it takes 21 days for the chicken to look after the egg, for the egg to hatch. So small things like that, teaching maths but bringing agriculture into it, making it vibrant and exciting, to be almost at the same level as medicine. Our young people, when you say, would you rather be a doctor or would you be in agriculture? They would rather be a doctor, but you see your farmer 3 times a day for breakfast, for lunch, and for supper. Yeah. You see your doctor when you're sick. So for me, that's the argument that we need to bring to schools, to young people, to get them excited and working with the soil and really looking after our food systems.
You're bringing up such important points, and for me, I'm loving the way you're putting it, because that is the reality. I mean, you ask kids where tomatoes come from, and they come from a truck. Can you imagine? But it's the truth, and I suppose it is our fault as well. But why? And again, to you, Pumi, why is agriculture not popular anymore? I mean, we've got a country, and we're looking at statistics that's saying that 30 million people. I mean, we just found out that with census that last year we've got 62 million people living in South Africa. 30 million of these people lack access to enough safe and nutritious food, whereas we have got beautiful arable land, amazing temperatures. Why are we not growing our foods, having food gardens anymore? What happened? Where did we go wrong there?
So it's the face of agriculture. We need to change the face of agriculture. There's 2 worlds of agriculture in South Africa. We've got an affluent world of agriculture, which is commercial farming, which looks good. And then we've got a smallholder farmer who is struggling, who is not making money, who doesn't have a fence, who doesn't have a borehole. So when a young person in the community is looking at a woman working the fields, they don't see it as an attractive space to be getting engaged into. We, alongside our private partners, alongside government, alongside civil society, we need to come together and say, how do we bring the sector back into agriculture? How do we support the non-negotiables of agriculture to make agriculture a commendable sector in terms of comparing it to any other growth sector in the country? It has the highest propensity around solving and reducing poverty and increasing our job creation. So there is so much compelling evidence around opportunities that can be created by agriculture if we took it seriously, not just as private sector, not just as civil society Andy doing it, but all of us together, coming together, joining our hands and saying there should be no reason for anyone going hungry, and there should be no reason, no one wanting to plant something, learn how to plant and understand the science, the commerce, the nutrition that agriculture brings into our ecosystem.
So, Andy, let's come back to now the whole issue of food wastage, because when you know, in the introduction we were busy talking about the fact that 10 million tons of quality food is lost or wasted throughout the supply chain annually. The supply chain, whether it's the cold chain or whatever the case may be, I mean, you were alluding to it as well. And yet, we sitting with a population of children that are facing stunted growth because they don't eat anymore because of this lost or wasted food. Now, let's talk about that. I mean, we need policies. Clearly, child malnutrition in an environment where we're throwing 10 million tons of food away, it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, and I think we need government to play an enabling role here. What organizations like Mpumi's is doing and what ours are doing is we're making sure that we've got about 36,000 commercial farmers across South Africa and over 200,000 small-scale farmers across South Africa. So those are huge amounts of surpluses that we can capitalize on as the low-hanging fruit to make sure that we reduce food loss and waste, as well as the impact of food loss and waste across the environment. And then we make sure that we intercept that food timeously so that we address this problem of food insecurity and malnutrition and starvation. Just in the last year alone, more than 15,000 children under the age of 5 years were registered in hospitals and treated for malnutrition. And that's because they don't have access to food, because food is no longer affordable. The cost of living crisis, according to the World Economic Forum, is the highest risk globally in the next 2 years. And so we don't see how the economic environment in South Africa is going to change rapidly, and jobs are not being created at the pace needed to exit people out of hunger. So we need to look at innovative ways to connect the dots better along the food value chain and work with farmers and wholesalers and retailers and manufacturers to intercept that food timeously, because it is edible, it is usable, it is nutritious food, and we just need to make sure that we connect the dots to get it to those that need it urgently.
Yeah, and the reality is that there is just it's important that there is a policy in place. I mean, we were reading newspaper headlines and front pages saying how there are factories making fake foods and, you know, things that are not right. You know, they're being canned and tinned and sold to people. And this is not what we want. We need it at a policy level where we know it's safe, where we're not harming South Africans by eating it, because that's another thing corporates worry about, I suppose, is that, you know, if they have lawsuits against them, if they do give out food and it's not good, is that not a concern as well?
Absolutely. So we are working with NEDLAC's cost of living crisis task team, and we've brought the Department of Health to the table. We've brought the Department of Trade and Industry to that table, and we've said to both departments, yes, low-hanging fruit, food loss and waste is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in the world, and we need policies that enable food donations. Thankfully, the Department of Health have come to the table and said, with a review of the front-of-pack labeling guidelines, there was public comment open and it closed in September. Food Forward SA made submissions in that regard, along with the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. And what we've said there was, at least in your guideline documents, encourage food donations and explain to people that food past its best before date may still be usable, may still be edible, and that food should not be discarded. And the Health Department has listened, and they've said they will look at considerations. It's under review at the moment, so we're waiting anxiously for the publications to come out in that regard.
All right. My guests, I thank you so much. We need to wrap, unfortunately, but such an important issue and wonderful points raised there. Andy du Plessis, Managing Director of Food Forward SA, and Mpumi Maisela, Founding Director, SE Holdings. Make farming sexy again. I like that. I like that one, Mpumi. That's a line I'm going to take out of what you told us today.